expecting that. Did he do it? So maybe this is crackhead behavior. What's up, little enzymes? Welcome back to Dacia's Digest. The topic of today's video is going to be false accusations. You'll see what I mean. Pretty much self-explanatory. Before we get started, I wanted to give a special thanks to Gal Pickney and Catherine Guest for my super thanks. Thank you so much, you guys. Woo! I truly appreciate it. You totally do not have to do any of that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. If you would also like to donate, my Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description, or you can get a super thanks, whatever. Totally don't have to. All of the links to everything you see or hear in this video will be in the description. And let's get into it. This one says, 39 male, falsely accused by my wife's father, 67 male. How do we move forward? My in-laws, 60s, have a lake house. It has a ton of space. It's a frequent vacation spot, and every holiday is done there. They've owned it since before I met my wife, 37 female. 4 years ago, we were all staying there when my wife's cousin, 37 female, got a very foul email. I won't get into what it said, but suffice it to say, it made her cry. My father-in-law works in IT. He examined the headers and determined that the email originated from an Android phone and that it was off of the lake house Wi-Fi. My in-laws are Apple users. I am an Android user. My father-in-law accused me in front of everyone of sending the message. I denied it, let him search my phone, and told him I would never do that. He found nothing but made a big show of telling me I had attacked his family and that I was banned from his home. He subsequently made a big post on Facebook about how he will always protect his family and how I had violated his home. What? Absolutely no evidence that OP did this, and the father-in-law is going off. I have a sneaking suspicion that the father-in-law probably didn't like OP to begin with and is just looking for any excuse to get him away from him and his family. He said, my wife now goes there with our kids alone. I have not been there, and I have not spoken with my in-laws in 4 years. We do holidays on a separate day together, and then on the holiday I go with my family, she takes the kids to the lake house. Yes, it sucks. When asked why I wasn't there, my father-in-law told my kids that I do bad things. What? Why is the wife not sticking by her husband? If I know my husband and I know he did nothing wrong, and there was literally no evidence of him doing anything wrong, and my father is just shunning him for seemingly no reason, I would not be taking our kids over to the house. I would be sticking by my husband. Either you're going to see us as a whole family unit and the whole family is going to come, or no one is going to come. Because now you're poisoning my kids against me, telling them I do bad things. And what is the wife? Is the wife just letting this happen? What's going on here? I'm so confused. And 4 years this has been going on. There should have been some kind of conversation somewhere in there where everybody's kind of on the same page. I understand where the father-in-law is coming from because as far as the other evidence, he's the only one with the Android phone. They didn't really know who it was. They knew it was from the Wi-Fi, so he's the only plausible, suspect. But at the same time, you found no additional evidence that actually points him to the crime. And again, if I were his wife, I would know my husband would never do that. Anyways, over 4th of July weekend, her cousin got another email from the same address. Once again, an Android, and once again on the lake house Wi-Fi. This time, I was 200 miles away. Well, when they checked, the other cousin, first cousin's sister, and her kids had Androids. The kids were bored and sending prank emails, not realizing they could be traced. So it was the kids all along. My wife called me up, relayed the story, and asked me if I could come down for the rest of the week with the family. I told her that I would love to, and to let me know what day everyone would be there for father-in-law to make a public apology to me. Right. She got very quiet and said, they just want to move forward. I replied, I do too, and I will be happy to do so after your father publicly admits to the family that he was wrong, apologizes to me, apologizes to our children, and posts a public apology on Facebook. Facts! I'm gonna need that apology expeditiously because you was so quick to accuse me and think I was wrong and post everything on your little Facebook. So you need to be just as quick in delivering that apology expeditiously. My wife started crying and said he's not going to do that. I told her that I'm not going to come back to the lake house, that her father made it clear he doesn't consider me family, and until he makes it right, I am done with her entire family. He essentially wants to pretend like it never happened and make it look like he forgave me and welcomed me back. I am not on board with this. When they arrived back, I informed her that, in the words of her father, I had to protect my family and our children would not be going back to the lake house either. Period. And it should have been like that from the beginning. My wife is devastated, begging me to forgive and move on. She says that her parents already feel awful, that they never said I wasn't family, and now I want to publicly shame and embarrass them. No, she doesn't. What's going on with the wife? She doesn't get it. They publicly shamed and embarrassed him. So they need to just as publicly clear his name. It's very simple. And yes, until you can do that, you are not seeing my children. And it should have been like that from the beginning. She says that it's not fair that I'm asking her to choose between me and her parents. I countered that her parents set up that choice 4 years ago and she had already chosen. The next lake house trip is Labor Day weekend. I've already told her that I will be bringing the kids to my brother's that weekend for a barbecue and pool party. My wife has agreed to come with us, but she keeps bringing up the lake house and begging me to reconsider. It keeps ending up with my blood pressure spiking and her crying, so I've asked her to stop bringing it up. My wife and I do love each other very much. This is maybe like 5% of our relationship, but it's something that's been weighing on me, and I know it's driving a wedge between us. I have always felt that my wife chooses her parents over me. She says she's sorry I feel that way, but it's not true. I told her that in 4 years, she didn't stand up for me because she didn't believe I didn't do it. She vehemently denies this, saying she's been trying to get her parents to let me come back since then. I don't want to unnecessarily shame her father, but making right the damage he did is non-negotiable. At the same time, my wife is crying every day, she's not eating, she's losing weight, and I know this is taking a tremendous toll on her. I don't want to be the reason she has this much stress and anxiety. How do I address this with my wife without causing a confrontation? How can I ensure that my kids understand the situation without feeling caught in the middle? TLDR, my father-in-law wrongly accused me of sending a hurtful email and banned me from their lake house. Now that the truth is out, I want him to make it right, and my wife is torn between me and her parents. I don't know. It's sounding to me like the wife has an unhealthy relationship with her parents because it just seems like an easy decision. This is your husband. This is your new family. If your husband was wronged, so say that it was a stranger. Say that a stranger did this to him and accused him of doing something, and then years down the line, it was found that he didn't really do it. You would expect the stranger to apologize, I think. So why is it such a crazy ask for your own parents to apologize to your husband? It just doesn't make sense. Pippin the Parrot says, I think confrontation is inevitable. It's 100% unacceptable that your wife has been letting her dad crap talk you to your own kids. That's flagrantly wrong. I suppose your wife has a history of being steamrolled by him and is afraid of what he'll do if she stands up to him. But that doesn't matter anymore. She's gonna have to be a big girl and deal with her dad. I can't believe she even kept seeing them after the Facebook posts designed to embarrass and humiliate you. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You should make your own post one way or the other. I can't understand why you're not seething with anger. This nonsense has to stop. That's actually a good idea for him to make his own Facebook. Since we want to make Facebook posts, I'm gonna make my own Facebook post. Opie says she claims she never heard him say that. My son repeated it to me. My wife said my father-in-law doesn't speak about me, and I don't think my son made that up. Yeah, why would the son? That doesn't even make no dang sense. Why would a child make that up? Melissa says, if he publicly humiliated you by defaming you, he must be twice as loud in publicly apologizing to you and clearing your name. His behavior was horrible, but the worst sin was defaming you in front of your kids. It's public shaming when it's done to her parents, but she's okay with them doing it to you with no repercussions. She should not be allowing them to disrespect you. And Rogue Slytherin says, seriously, if my husband swore up and down he didn't do it and I knew his character, I wouldn't have stood by all these years pretending that my father was right. I especially wouldn't bring my children there for holidays and allow my spouse to be excluded while granddaddy tells the kids he does bad things. She's literally allowing this person to be dragged through the mud to her own children because either she truly believed OP was guilty or she is that conflict avoidant. OP, you have a wife problem big time. Tell her she's single-handedly allowed and facilitated this treatment from her family. The least she can do is stand by your side and demand an apology publicly, an explanation to you and your children privately, and a very thorough Facebook post taking accountability of the false accusations and apologizing profusely. Anything short of that is unacceptable. This whole situation stinks and your wife can pound sand. She doesn't get to avoid conflict constantly at the expense of her husband. Is she married to you or her daddy? Oh man. There are sirens. I hope you guys cannot hear, but there's like sirens going off outside. And then I'm going to read a few responses from OP's page. He responded to someone and said, his response has basically been, yes, I know now that he didn't do it, but I was protecting my family and I made the right decision. I won't apologize for putting my family first. My wife insists she's been on my side the whole time, but multiple times told me if I did this to just come clean and apologize to her cousin and father. I told her that it's clear she didn't believe me, and if she's been advocating, it's been for them to forgive me, not to believe me. She denies this. I do not believe her. Who does the wife think the husband is? She obviously doesn't believe in his character and who she chose as her life partner. Like, why would you even believe that your husband did this? I would be searching for other explanations. Like, what other possibilities are there? Because I know my man. I know he didn't do. Like, if I was her, that's how I would feel. But not her coming to him talking about, look, if you did this, just come clean. That's crazy. He replied to another comment and said, her family is all over the US. The lake house is really the only time that she gets to see her family. And in all honesty, they're all pretty great people. Up until 4 years ago, I had a great relationship with her sisters, her cousins, her aunts, and I thought her parents, but I guess not. I wasn't going to deny my kids and my wife a relationship with her side of the family because my father-in-law acted like a sack of garbage. Don't get me wrong, it broke my heart, and I will never get back the last 4 years of Christmases that I spent without my kids. The day my father-in-law is cold in the ground, I will spit on his grave for that. Oh man, that is a strong statement. My wife can keep going. She's an adult, I can't stop her, but there's no way he's ever seeing our kids again until he makes this right. As he shouldn't. And he replied to someone else, I haven't had any contact with anyone on her side of the family in 4 years. To them, I attacked a member of the family and I was rightfully banned. Her one sister and her aunt sent me friend requests on Facebook after this came out. The truth has not been shared with extended family. My wife has told it to several family members, but her parents are not making an effort to share this information. And then I'm assuming someone asked what was in the email, and he said it wasn't exactly eloquent. It was pretty much targeting a certain aspect of her appearance in a very cruel and childish way. He responded to another person and said, honestly, I don't care. The only thing different now is that I absolutely refuse to let my children see anyone from her side of the family. If I did that before, I would have been the bad guy. Now, that honor goes to my father-in-law. If they're willing to make things right, then I will move forward for my wife and for my children. If not, the next time he'll see my children on a holiday is when he's looking up at them. OP. And last comment I'll read from him. I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, but if I lashed out, set restrictions for my family, and launched into an all-out war with my in-laws, it would just confirm what people thought of me. I never spoke badly of them. I never acted cruelly. I never allowed myself to be angry in front of my wife or children. I tolerated it because I love my family, because I don't want them to miss out on relationships with their family. My wife's sister and I used to hit up breweries all the time together. She's a great aunt and she thought she was defending her cousin. I don't blame her. At this point, I know I acted with integrity even when others did not. So I'm assuming people are asking like why he didn't stop the children from going over there way back then. And his reasoning kind of does make sense. Like if he would have stopped them from going over there, that would have added more fuel to the fire. Like, see, he's guilty. He's evil. And so the fact that he didn't kind of like gives him more credibility. And now that he's going to keep them from going over there, now that the truth is out, like I get what he's saying. Now the onus is on the father-in-law. All right, let's go to the next story. He doesn't have any updates. So this was posted in the Dacia's Digest subreddit. It's a cross post from another story. This one, trigger warning. It has some mentions of death, of MURDER, of course, false accusations. Yeah, all of that. So if you don't want to hear anything like that, you can skip forward. My 30 female, husband 33 male, accused me of unaliving someone out of the blue. How do I salvage this? This is long and ridiculous. Sorry. My 30 female husband, Luke 33 male, had a sister, Laura 29 female. We were all close and saw each other 2 to 3 times a month along with their parents. Almost 6 months ago, Laura fell down the stairs at their family home and passed away. It was a freak accident. There's a window on the half landing and she hit her head on the windowsill. Wow. Rest in peace. That's very sad. Like, those types of situations scare me so much. It's all gone, just like a freak accident. Nothing you probably could have prevented. Just like the situation was just the right recipe for the worst to happen. I was the last person to see her. I was there for less than 10 minutes and she was in her pajamas making coffee. I didn't even stay for a drink, and I struggle with how such a brief and meaningless interaction could have been her last. She deserved so much more. My husband and I have only been married for a year, but we've been together for 4 and have known each other for 20 plus. When Laura's parents found her, they called my husband straight away and we rushed over. We faced the whole thing as a family. In the days after, Luke started quizzing me. Exactly what we talked about, what she was wearing, where we were standing, etc. It progressed to saying I was providing conflicting information on tiny details he was deliberately misunderstanding and accusing me of withholding information because I couldn't tell him things like what pajamas she was wearing. This escalated quickly but lasted for less than a week, as I lost my cool and made it clear that I was done answering questions. He didn't bring it up again, and I wrote it off as a grief quirk. His behavior was generally that of a normal grieving person. Last Friday, he outright accused me of unaliving her in front of his parents out of the blue. We were all stunned. There was an inquest which recently concluded, and there was never any doubt the verdict would be accidental passing. He said it was completely obvious and he couldn't believe that no one else could see it. He claims I went through his phone and found his messages with Laura. I have absolutely no idea what messages he's talking about. I have never looked at his phone, and that I went over to confront her and things got out of hand and I pushed her downstairs. By the end, he was shouting about going to the police and getting the inquest overturned and how I wasn't going to get away with it. Whew. So he has a guilty conscience. It sounded like he was doing something nefarious, thought that she found out and confronted the sister. So what was he doing? Let me be clear. Laura and I had a great relationship. We all did. I have no idea where this has come from other than these messages I haven't seen, and even then, I don't think there's anything I could ever see on someone's phone that would drive me to unalive them. It's just ridiculous. He's been with his parents since this happened and will not talk to me at all. I've had some contact with his mom, but she's not being very communicative. The last I heard, she didn't know what messages he was referring to either. I am still completely stunned and I have no idea how to proceed. I made a commitment to be there for him always, and I understand that grief can manifest in strange ways, but part of me feels like my love for him died the second he called me an unaliver, and I don't know how we could possibly work through this. I also really don't want to be thought of in this way, and I have no idea if he has said anything to people we know. I obviously haven't. A brain tumor or psychotic break has crossed my mind, and I suggested it to his mother, and she just said she'll talk to him. Other than the questions before, he hasn't been acting odd. Obviously, he's been grieving, but he seemed sane and sensible other than this. I feel like I'm going mad. Does anyone have any advice at all? TLDR, my husband's sister passed away in a horrible accident, and my husband, for absolutely no reason other than some mystery messages, thinks I was responsible. Yeah, this is wild. I don't know if it's like a grief. It might be a mixture of grief, but I feel like it's a mixture of like, he really think you did that. And I understand, like, from his point of view, if there were some other things going on that he was doing behind the scenes that he was guilty of, that kind of was like a recipe for a disaster, and he probably really thought you had something to do with it, which is crazy. But there's no going back from this period. Like, even if he comes out of this and thinks you didn't do anything, or like, he's obviously past the point of believing logic and living in reality. The inquiry has already come out. The autopsy has already shown that it was an accident. There's nothing more that's going to make him believe the truth. At this point, you're gonna have to call it, sis, unfortunately. So some of the comments here, Moral Tax says, F no, you don't salvage this, you get a lawyer and get the F out. Best case scenario, he has just admitted to sending messages with his sister that he thinks would make you angry enough to harm her over them. I have some ideas about what those might be, and they're all bad. How did the parents react when he did this? Yeah, I didn't even think about what kind of messages, like what the content of the messages might be. It really could be anything. But something that he thinks is bad enough to where she would be mad? Like, what could it be? Opie has a response here. When he first laid out the accusation at his parents' house, both his mother and I just kept asking him about the messages, and all he would say was that I know exactly what messages he was talking about. She was as stunned as me, and his father just said he didn't understand what he was talking about. He's a man of few words, but there was plenty of head shaking. The whole thing was surreal, so no one knew how to react. I honestly don't know what kind of lawyer I would even speak to about this. From what I'm aware, the coroner's decision can't be appealed, and the police can't launch an investigation into an accidental passing. I don't think I'm quite ready for divorce. We haven't spoken since his accusation, and I walked out about 5 minutes after he threw it out, and I have no idea what his frame of mind is. I don't know, sis. I don't think there's really much coming back from your life partner, your husband, accusing you of unaliving another person and actually believing it. I don't know if you could continue a relationship after that. Someone responded to that, you want to live with the person that thinks you're an unaliver? There's not really any coming back from that, especially when he thinks he has this evidence. This isn't some accident or grief, in my opinion. Even if tomorrow he says, sorry, you're not an unaliver, there's no going back. That trust is gone. You need to worry about yourself. Speak to a divorce lawyer. You don't need to sign yet, but you should start planning an exit strategy. And they need to get a hold of the sister's phone. He obviously was doing something he shouldn't have been doing. They need to get a hold of that phone. OP said, unfortunately, I think that's where I am. For the past week, I've been telling myself I'm going to get a call saying he's been detained for mental health reasons, but nothing is happening and my patience is wearing thin with the silence. There would have to be an extremely good reason for me to stay after this, to the point that I'm even quietly hoping for a brain tumor over a mental break, because that comes with solid proof that these aren't his own thoughts and feelings. I am clutching at straws. Another person says, what you need to realize is that you are currently in real danger from your husband. First, he thinks you killed his sister and you're getting away with it, as coroner recorded the death as an accident. Second, he did, or believes he did, exchange some messages with his sister that potentially could drive his partner to harm the sister. Whatever these were, they also don't sound like good news. Stay safe and remember this man is currently not the person you think he is. Right. That's another good point, because aside from the accusation, there's also these messages of something he was doing that he shouldn't have been doing, obviously. Just based on that alone, she should leave. Because I don't know what it is, but obviously it was bad. But everyone is pretty much saying like she's in danger, which I completely agree. He is not in the right state of mind either way, whether it's a tumor, whether it's a psychotic break, but whatever it is, she needs to think about that. She responded to someone else and said, I was interviewed by the coroner's office after her death, as I was the last person to see her. She died about 3 hours after I saw her, and I'd been to the supermarket and was home by that point. It's all verifiable and was a recorded interview. I haven't spoken to anyone but his mother, and that's only been over messages. She's never been a big texter, but she has seemed very cagey over the past few days. I don't know if this means she's seen the messages. I've asked and been ignored. Oh, what are the messages? Someone else said, I think they mean record everything you remember about the day your soon-to-be ex accused you of being an unaliver. OP responded, I'm feeling so freaked out at the idea that he came up with this almost immediately after her passing and has either been sitting on it or planning his confrontation, that I'm basically trying to dissect the past 6 months. Maybe it's time I start writing things down. Right until it happened, things felt very normal. Obviously, her passing has been felt deeply by all of us, and things aren't anything like they were, but there have been no signs of anything like this, even on the day. Let me sift through this. She deleted her account, so I cannot go and see if I can't easily go look for her comments. So I'm gonna have to sift through this. And I wanna know if she ever found out what was in them dang messages. Wait a minute. Okay, hold on. We might be getting somewhere. She said, I'm absolutely desperate to see these messages because I'm right there with you on the sheer wackiness of what they have to contain. It hadn't occurred to me that they might not exist. I've never known him to lie, but I do think a mental health issue is a real possibility. His relationship with his sister didn't seem odd, and I've never been interested in his phone, but he's never been defensive about it either. So I think you might be right. If I had such incriminating messages, I'd probably worry about them before now. Someone else said, does he have an old iPad that was linked to his phone? Just thinking that if he did, you might be able to find out whether or not there are any messages. OP said, you are a genius. Then she said, it's not signed into his messages. I was so excited. But then she said, I have his iCloud password. It has a backup from yesterday. I have no idea how to turn this thing into something I can actually see. It doesn't have a messages folder or any signs of how to use it for anything other than restoring a whole phone, which I don't want to do. Does anyone know how to actually get the messages from this? Sorry to throw a tech support request in. I can't believe I didn't think of this. Huge thanks to the person who suggested it. Someone said you should be able to erase the contents of the iPad and then put in his iCloud password to restore it from his backup yesterday. Then just click on the messages and it should have whatever was backed up. Okay. Oh my God, I feel like I'm watching a thriller right now. Did she get the messages? Come on, OP, come on. Please don't leave us hanging. Someone else was talking about sister-in-law's phone, and OP said she only backed up her pictures and videos to iCloud. All of her messages were lost as they couldn't get into the phone itself, just the backups. Let me go back to this other thread. I'm literally looking through every single comment trying to see if she was able to find these goddamn messages. But there's also some interesting comments. Someone was saying any chance he pushed her and he is trying to blame it on you. A lot of other people are saying it might be incest. That's crazy. That would be like that would explain why he's so, I guess, secretive about what was in the messages. Because if it was like, you know, him cheating or him wanting to leave her or something, I feel like that's something that he would be able to say. I mean, you're already at the point where he probably thinking of leaving her anyway, so like why wouldn't he just come clean? But if it was something more nefarious like that, incest, that would be something that he wouldn't want people to know or he couldn't easily admit to. A few people are thinking that he did it though, and he's trying to blame it on her. You guys, I'm gutted. I literally have scrolled through every single comment underneath this post. Do y'all see this scroll? It just keeps going. I have opened up every thread under this comment. Every single comment I have looked at, and she did not ever respond. If she found what was in the messages, now I feel that I have a Reddit-shaped hole in my soul that I cannot fill unless I figure this out. We're gonna do some investigation. I'm gonna put on my detective hat. Is there an update? No, don't get excited. Wait a minute. There is an update. Oh, I don't know if it'll be the one we want, but this was actually posted on Best of Redditor updates, and they got the You don't know how okay, I'm so happy with myself right now. Okay, let's go to the update. OM freaking G. Wow. Okay, so here's the update. This was actually posted in a different subreddit, in a Legal Advice UK subreddit. So she says, can I force my husband to get a mental health assessment, and do I risk being arrested or prosecuted? We're in England. I am in a bizarre and complex situation with my husband. I have broken the law and I feel I have no choice but to do so again for my safety. I don't know what type of solicitor I need or what the next steps should look like. We're in England and I'll try not to editorialize too much. Okay, when was the first? The first post was July 6th, so this was the next day. My husband's sister passed away suddenly at the start of the year. Her passing was an accident and there was no suggestion to the contrary. The inquest was recently concluded and a verdict of accidental passing returned. I was the last person to see her, but her time of death, which was almost immediate due to her injury, was confirmed to be hours after I had left the house. All of this was verified at the time. In the immediate aftermath, my husband behaved strangely and kept trying to trip up my story of the last time we saw each other, which was a brief interaction. Last week, months after this was first and last mentioned, he outright accused me of unaliving his sister in front of his parents. He says I saw his messages with his sister and confronted her, and that he's going to have the coroner decision overturned and have the police investigate. I haven't seen or heard from him since. Today is day 9. I posted for advice on Reddit. I'm pretty desperate at this point, and it has spooked me quite reasonably, I think, but also led to me committing a crime and planning another. My husband's iCloud credentials were saved on it. Oh, I'm getting so excited. I'm sorry. My husband's iCloud credentials were saved on an old iPad in his office, and I downloaded his backup last night. I have read all of his messages with his sister, and there is absolutely nothing like he describes. What? I wasn't expecting that. Where's the drama? Where's the juiciness? Where's the scandal? You found nothing? Did he delete? Maybe he deleted things. Because even though you have an iCloud backup, if he deleted messages, they wouldn't be included in the backup, right? And that was anticlimactic. I mean, at least, she was able to get the messages, but okay. I understand this is illegal, and I'm concerned about the possible ramifications. I am also waiting for a call back from a locksmith to change the locks on the home we own together, which I believe is also against the law. So this leads to my actual questions. I feel justified in what I've done for my safety, but is there a degree of pragmatism under the law for these issues because of the situation, or am I shooting myself in the foot? I am resigned to the fact my relationship is over, but his parents don't seem to be taking this seriously, and they're icing me out. I believe this is a serious mental health issue which may put people, namely me, at risk. Can I do anything about this when all I have is the fact I'm being accused of unaliving someone? I feel he needs to be detained, and this should be investigated as a full-blown psychotic break. Sorry, this is all a bit mental. In addition, what type of solicitor do I need? My understanding is that a coroner decision can't be appealed. Is that correct? Are his accusations going to go anywhere? Can I protect myself from this or stop him escalating to tell others? We live in our hometown and everyone knows everyone. This could follow me forever, and it's either a lie or a delusion. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Wow. So obviously in this thread, everyone is giving her legal advice. Even someone says, what law have you broken reading your husband's messages? I'm not sure there's a law to cover that. But seems like she has gotten some pretty good advice. People are telling her next steps. Some people are suspicious of her. I'm not gonna lie, at one point I was kind of like, But I'm just thinking, if it were me, I would probably be acting in the same way that she was. Someone accused her of one of the most serious and heinous crimes. Like, I would be spiraling. And then you have to think, she has literally hundreds of comments, hundreds of people telling her, do this, do that, this, So I'm kind of glad she deleted her account, because I'm sure it was probably getting a little bit too much for her. But shoot, that is crazy. Is there anything else in this? There is another update. There is. There's actually 2 more. Bro, shout out to this subreddit. Shout out. They got it before she deleted her account. Okay, let me just read from here then. So from that first update, a few more comments. When told OP can't lock out her husband or force him to get a psych eval, OP said, "Thank you so much for your response. Locking each other out doesn't sound like a pattern I want to get into, but I think I'll go ahead and change the locks once on the basis that it isn't you do this, so you have to leave the house, and also you'll be prosecuted, levels of seriousness. In terms of him being deemed to lack capacity, is there any way I can trigger the process that you know of? Is something like this sufficient for the Mental Health Act to kick in. I've been Googling, and you can be detained if professionals think your mental health puts you or others at risk and you need to be in hospital. It seems very vague. Obviously, I'm biased, but accusing someone of murder and then screaming about how they aren't going to get away with it feels like risky behavior. Does he need to have made explicit threats, or is there a clearer bar to meet? Sorry for asking so many questions. Someone said, you are jumping ahead of yourself and playing out situations that have not occurred. If your husband reports you to the police for accessing his data and you are subsequently arrested or taken in for questioning, then obtain the services of a criminal solicitor for advice. With respect to changing locks and ending your marriage, seek a solicitor that deals with family law and divorce. If you feel that you are at risk from your husband, talk to a domestic harm helpline, and if you feel you are at an immediate risk of harm, then call the police. If you think your husband is mentally ill and presents a risk to himself or others, call the police. OP responded, I don't think that's a fair assessment. Being accused of arguably the most serious crime to exist has most definitely occurred. My understanding of the law is that something is illegal whether you are reported to the police or not. Those messages are evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that his accusations are false. They were apparently the trigger to me literally unaliving someone I was extremely close to. I have illegally accessed them, and I don't think it's unreasonable to inquire as to the potential impact of that. I am fully aware that I need a solicitor, but as you're probably aware, today is Sunday. I don't know if I need to seek someone out based on a divorce, which honestly, if this is a mental health issue, it's not going to be something I go for, or a criminal solicitor, or someone who deals with the Mental Health Act, as my absolute priority preference is getting him assessed. My only exposure to the legal system in my entire life was through this inquest, and that is obviously completely different to any of this. I am not educated in this area. We have a second update. This was like a week later. Firstly, thank you to those who helped me to get my husband's iCloud backups through an old iPad. I wasn't expecting much from Reddit, but I got valuable, practical advice before my post was locked, and I appreciate it. There were no crazy or even suspicious messages. I've searched for over 100 terms and scrolled back over years. I saw a side of them both I wasn't expecting, but nothing that explains the claim that I unalived Laura over their chats. Nothing to suggest he was cheating, absolutely nothing to suggest incest. I repeat, no incest, no weird gaps of deleted conversations or a switch to another app would fit. Just siblings making plans, sending memes, and gossiping. They said unexpectedly horrible stuff about a few people, but not me. It was sort of a relief, but it raised more questions than it answered. I sought legal advice also from Reddit after posting here. It turns out my options are divorce him or sit down. I contacted my community mental health team, who said they'd reach out but made it clear it wasn't urgent. I then called his mom and said if I didn't hear from him by this weekend, I would get a solicitor and ask for a mental health assessment as part of the divorce. In response, he made a ridiculous post to Facebook, which neither of us have used in years, and everything blew up. I'm going to try to keep this succinct. Oh, God. Shout out to the person who posted this in our subreddit. This is juicy. Twists and turns. I love it. I love it. On a Friday night, he made a long accusation on Facebook with new information. He said he'd been planning to leave me for months with his sister's support, and I found the messages and unalived her. The coroner has reopened the case, and the police are preparing to arrest me, and he needs to make sure people know before the trial stops him talking about it. It was well written and seemed vaguely plausible. He messaged people links so it got some attention. We live in our hometown and have a large circle of friends because we've been here all our lives. People I haven't spoken to since school were reaching out to me asking what the F was going on. It was madness. In response, I posted the export of his entire conversation history with Laura, also to Facebook, when I finally got back. Brilliant. When I finally got back in. I linked to the chat along with a post explaining my side and noting that I had changed my ex's iCloud and Apple passwords, and that if he wanted them back, he should comment on my post and update his own, admitting that he was lying. Eventually, he did. So what was this all about? Did he do it? Why accuse someone else when you know that they didn't do it? Did he do it? When I started getting messages about his post, I panicked, and changing his passwords seemed important to preserve everything because he'd know I had access. When I spoke to him the next morning, it's clear he's not having a mental episode at all, but is claiming one because he's been caught in a big lie. As soon as he was outed, he called me, clearly drunk, begging and promising to explain everything if I deleted my post. I hung up and told him to call me back the next day. He did after many missed calls and texts, and he tried to bargain and guilt trip me with his mental health until it was clear the wrong people had seen his conversation. It's hard to describe, but it seemed fake. It was too well rehearsed, and then this morning, when it was clear he was getting nowhere, he blocked me. Begging for mercy and reciting facts about mental disorders doesn't align with someone in crisis with a sincere belief that someone unalived their sibling. The question of why he did all this remains unanswered, and he will not be getting his passwords until it is. The legal advice subreddit said this stuff is technically illegal, but it's beneath a court to take action, so I'm going to count on that because I feel like I had no other choice at the time, and now I don't see any other way to get answers from him. I am desperate and it's all I've got. So there we are. The relationship I have believed was my destiny since I was a teenager has boiled down to petty, convoluted, and vindictive BS played out on social media for reasons still unknown. My hope for a brain tumor is fading, and clearly tomorrow morning is going to be when I lawyer up and stop posting about this. I am mortified. I have no idea whether some people might believe him and still don't know why this all happened in the first place. Sorry I don't have a happier update, and thanks once again to everyone who offered advice. I am so confused. Why? If it has been 6 months since the sister has passed, but immediately after he was already thinking in his head that the wife had something to do with it. But did he just make up the text messages thing just to give himself some evidence to support his claim? Or was he making that up because he knows who really did? I am confused. OP on her husband's reaction after confessing to lying. OP says he didn't react at all. He'd called me tens of times at that point, and we'd had 5 conversations on the phone about it. He was laser focused on me deleting the chat log from the get-go, but when I made it clear that posting that comment and editing his original Facebook post was the only way to progress the conversation at all, he finally did it. Then he went silent publicly as far as I can see, but continued begging me behind the scenes. Someone said, what on earth is in those chats that he's so desperate to keep people from seeing and that would conceivably lead you to unalive someone? Is there any chance they were using some kind of code or something? OP responded, I think it was the fact that it proved his story false alongside the way they spoke about some people. It was really damaging stuff, and I can see why he panicked. I hated to do it to him, but I really couldn't think of anything else because so many people had questions. Oh, she has another update. So this is update number 3. Hi everyone, me again. Both times I've posted it here has paid off hugely in terms of helping unravel this mess, so I hope it's third time lucky. For the past few weeks, I've been trying to figure out why my husband suddenly accused me of unaliving his sister who died in an accident at home 6 months ago. It still feels as ridiculous now as it did then. When Laura passed away, we found out she had about 3,000 pounds in hidden debt. It was odd because she was pretty open about her finances, but it wasn't out of character for her to overspend, so I hadn't really thought about it since. A comment on my last post prompted me to look more closely at money stuff, and a message to my husband from Laura asking about a payment stuck out. I'd initially assumed it was about a car issue she'd had a few weeks before she passed, but Luke definitely paid at the garage when they picked it up because we talked about it after she dropped him home. It didn't occur to me when I first looked through. The messages supposedly proved I was an unaliver, so I had been looking for something scandalous. The message about payment was the only thing I had at that point, and I had no idea what it meant, so I took a chance. I told his mother I knew about the money and that if he didn't get in touch with me that day, I would make sure everybody else did too. Okay, OP. He called me straight away and asked me over to his parents' house to talk. He looked dreadful, and the first thing he asked me was whether I was happy now all of his friends hate him. I told him I don't give a F about his relationships and that I was there for answers. It turns out my husband told the coroner's office that he was secretly helping Laura pay some of her debt because she was embarrassed and struggling to keep up with her lifestyle. I assume it didn't seem suspicious because her passing was clearly an accident, and that's why they were investigating. In reality, he took out loans and store cards in her name, and so he was defrauded. Hold on. Let me read it. In reality, he took out loans and store cards in her name, and she somehow found out a few weeks before she passed. Some guy he works with had apparently done it before and arranged it all, and if Laura hadn't found out, he claims they could have had it written off without her ever knowing. When she did find out, the guy left him high and dry, quell surprise, and he had to pay it off. I'm inclined to believe that's the gist of what happened, but I'm shocked my husband would do something this stupid. So he took out debt. This is what I'm understanding. OP's husband, the deceased brother, took out loans, store cards, whatever, in the name of the deceased without the deceased knowing. And she somehow found out a few weeks before she passed. That's what's the reality. That's what actually happened. The story that the husband concocted was that the sister, the deceased, was struggling to keep up with her lifestyle, and so she took out all these loans and all this credit to keep up, and she was embarrassed and requesting help from her brother to pay it off, which, how does that even make sense? But this is the story that the husband, brother has concocted. And so, because OP found out that her husband, the deceased brother, was helping her pay off these bills and basically taking from their family money to help her pay off her bills and keep up with her household, she confronted the sister about this, and that's what ended up in the accident. How that makes any sense, I don't know. Because why would OP go to the sister to confront the sister rather than going directly to her own husband to confront him about why he's supposedly paying off his sister's debt? It makes no sense. So OP's husband is a scammer. He scammed his own flesh and blood, his own sister. He tried to scam the justice system by blaming his sister's accidental passing on his own wife. Then he tried to scam the mental health system by claiming a mental health disorder when he don't even really have a mental health disorder. He's scamming everybody, left and right. Just a full-out scammer. That's crazy. So, he said when she passed away so soon after, his brief and apparently genuine suspicion was that she had told me about it that day and we argued and I had unalived her. He couldn't explain why I would unalive someone because they were a victim of fraud. But according to him, he felt guilty in the immediate aftermath and his brain made it fit. This is a roller coaster. I mostly believe this, but he tried launching into more weaponized therapy speak at that point, so I cut the topic off. A few months after his sister's passing, Luke received a letter from a credit company, not even the police, saying he was being investigated. Laura didn't have much, so her debts, which were less than £10,000 even with the fraud, were mostly written off. Something obviously flagged against my husband during that process. I don't know how or why. When the letters got more threatening, he believed the investigation would reopen the inquest and that he would be accused of fraud, perjury, and, because of his previously unknown motive, possibly unaliving. He claims the only thing the company investigating him actually knows is that the fraud came from our address, so accusing me would make it impossible to prove because it would be a coin toss, his words, as to which one of us took out the credit in Laura's name. That was worth our entire marriage to him and my reputation in the community we have been a part of our entire lives. He says self-preservation kicked in and nothing else mattered when he thought about what could happen to him. When I asked him how his witness statement fits into his plan because it proved he lied either way by acknowledging he knew about the debt and paying it, he froze for roughly 1,000,000 years before saying he hadn't thought of that. Obviously, my response was to ask why, if he hadn't thought of it. He specifically said it was a lie he needed to cover earlier in the conversation. Suddenly, he's sobbing and his parents are rushing in to ask me to leave. I was in tears at this point, asking how the F he could do this to me over something so stupid and how his parents knew about this as his mom was pushing me out of their house. All she said was that she couldn't have this conversation with me. She was crying too, but wouldn't say another word. I'm getting a little bit confused about what just happened there, but we'll just continue. I am now 99% sure the effer was trying to frame me, not for her passing, but for the fraud. He was going to claim that he was lying for me in the coroner's interview, right? If he wrapped it all up as quietly paying off her debt on my behalf, then genuinely suspecting me of her unaliving, it would protect his reputation and point the finger at me. It just doesn't make sense any other way. Is my husband trying to frame me to weasel out of his actions? And how do I get to the bottom of this? I'm obviously open to theories because Reddit is the only reason I got this far in the first place. That being said, please don't come up with conspiracies about Laura's passing in the comments. It's upsetting. She was wearing crappy old slippers and walking upstairs with a cup of tea, and she slipped and hit her head on a windowsill. This was never a murder mystery. It was someone's life, and she passed away just because. Maybe a butterfly flapped its wings somewhere, I don't know, but it's hard enough to accept without having guesses shouted at me on the internet whilst my marriage falls apart. I mean, yeah, it sounds to me like he's trying to frame you for something. He's trying to put the blame on you for something. Either he's gonna lie and say that, oh, you found out about the charges and, you got mad and it got heated, or he's gonna lie and say that, oh, it wasn't actually me who committed the fraud, it was my wife. So I'm trying to pay off the debt for my wife on her behalf. And then I don't know how the unaliving comes into play. Either way, he's trying to pin the blame on you, which is crazy. Let me read the last few comments and then we are done with this story. So Even Budget says, I mean, framing you for fraud seems the most plausible from what you found, though it's an incredibly idiotic frame job that wouldn't work. So I have to say, he sounds incredibly dumb. As an explanation, it's probably the best you're going to get, though very unsatisfying. I am mystified by his parents' behavior and what he thought that Facebook post was going to accomplish. It's not like the investigators are going to poll the town. He could have just written back to them that he knew nothing about these cards and the only people at that address were you and him. There was no need in this weird plot to ruin your reputation publicly, but again, he sounds very dumb, so I guess that made sense to him. So sorry this happened to you, but I suspect in several years' time, hopefully sooner, you will see being rid of him and his family was actually a blessing. I wish you your very best life going forward. Opie said, this is what I don't understand. He's behaved impulsively before, but never anything like this. I understand that he didn't take the fraud seriously until he was caught by Laura, and I can get that her death would have made him anxious about it, but I don't know what would possess him to think he could just pass it along. It's baffling. And Even Budget responded, what's also strange is that it sounds like the fraud amount was low enough. While yes, he'd get in trouble, it isn't like he's going to be ruined. Not that this is a good thing, but white-collar crime is not exactly strongly prosecuted in the UK. Plus, it sounds like a repayment settlement could have solved this. Unless he works in finance or needs a security clearance, this wouldn't be something he couldn't recover from. Also very odd is that you were his alibi for the accident. I realize that wasn't necessary as this was an accident regardless of alibis, but still it's very dumb if he was worried about this being known as a motive that he would alienate his alibi. I keep coming back to the dumb part, the only explanation that makes sense, lol. Opie said, this is exactly it. £3,000 would have been manageable. He could have set up a plan to repay it over a year, and he'd have needed to tighten up, but would have been fine. It was a private company, so getting their money back would obviously be more of a priority than seeking prosecution. This is also part of why his story doesn't make sense. It's such a small amount in the grand scheme of things to blow up your entire life. The only thing I can think of is pure desperation to protect his reputation, but even then, who goes that far? Someone said, is he someone that really prides himself on his reputation? Is his job in finance? Opie said, he's a mechanic, so he's got a bit of a masculine pride thing going on. He always wants to be seen as good salt of the earth, do anything for anyone, whilst actually being a good person sometimes slips, usually in the way he talks to people after a drink. Never ever to the point where I'd think he'd take loans out in people's names or try to ruin me like this. Someone said, I'm sure you've been asked this, but is he on drugs? Not this is crackhead behavior. He's a casual drug user, but I've never seen signs of it getting unhealthy. He does Coca-Cola maybe 8 to 10 times per year. Girl! What? That's a lot. Who just casually does Coca-Cola 8 to 10 times a year? That's like once or twice a month. Like, it's not weed. It's not like it's a, thing where you can just casually, like, this is a serious drug, Coca-Cola. So maybe this is crackhead behavior. I've never known him to buy it when his money would have been better spent on something else. He's better at spending money than having it generally, but he's never ever shown signs of being greedy or deceitful. The only thing I can think of is that it would have been in the lead up to Christmas, but his gifts weren't particularly extravagant, so I don't think it was a desperate attempt at a magical Christmas. Wow. Oh my goodness. This was an absolute roller coaster. Shout out to the person who added this in our subreddit. This was a great story. I liked this. It wasn't predictable. I feel like there was twists and turns. It seems real to me. If it's not real, I really applaud her for the writing on this. This feels like it could be a Lifetime movie. But I guess we have our answer, and it sounds like she's working on the divorce, so kudos to you, OP. Good luck in the future. Hopefully you never find yourself in a situation like this ever again. This was wild. So, let's go to our palette cleanser. Before we do that, we are on the road to 10K on this channel, so double check and make sure you are subscribed, and let's get into this last post. So these are actually going to be videos. I've actually seen this video before on social media, but a woman always feeds this squirrel, and the squirrel returned the favor by leaving a cookie out. It's so cute. Here we go. Look. So she sees a cookie there, and this little squirrel is like, he literally has it in his mouth, is climbing up to the spot where she always leaves him food and is leaving it there. And then, that is so cute. It didn't show it, but in the other version I've seen of this, it shows where the woman leaves the food. And then it shows like, then it cuts to the next day where the squirrel is like leaving the cookie out. That is so freaking cute. It's like he knows. And then this other video I just thought was so cute. Once a week, they go to the playground because their dog, Autumn, is obsessed with this slide. That is so cute. And then they just run to go do it again. I love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.